go ahead and open the commission meeting. 11:05 now. 4.
Yep.
We will go ahead and
Mouse.
Do you want Facebook on?
we have full quorum.
Make it.
Mr. Adams and I are here, and Mr. Maryboy is on the line, on the phone. Roll call is 3 present, invocation. Any volunteer?
I am Rajan Z. I'm president of Universal Society of Hinduism. Can I go ahead, Commissioner?
Go ahead.
I'm Rajan Z. I am president of Universal Society of Hinduism. I shall be reading in Sanskrit from ancient Hindu scriptures, some as old as 1500 BCE, and then interpret in English. Om Bhur Svah Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dio Yona Prachodayat. We meditate on the transcendental glory of the Deity Supreme, who's inside the heart of the earth, inside the life of the sky, and inside the soul of the heaven. May he stimulate and illuminate our minds. Astoma Sadgamya Tamsoma Jyotirgamya Mrityormamratam Gamya. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from death to immortality. Niyatam Kuru Karma Tvam Karma Jyao Karmana Sarira Yatra Pi Chatena Prasiddhi Karmana Jagnarthat Karmana Unyatra Lokoyam Karma Bandana Tadartham Karma Konteya Mukta Sang Samachara. Fulfill all your duties. Action is better than inaction. Even to maintain your body, you are obliged to act. Selfish action imprisons the world. Act selflessly without any thought of personal profit. Om Saha Navavatu, Saha Nobanaktu, Saha Viren Karva Bahai, Tejasvi Nava Dita Mastu, Ma Vid Bisa Bahai. May we be protected together. May we be nourished together. May we work together with great vigor. May our study be enlightening. May no obstacle arise between us. Samni va akuti, samna hirdayani va, samna mastu vo mano, yatha va susahasti. United your resolve, united your hearts, may your spirits be at one, that you may long together dwell in unity and concord. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Om. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, go ahead and go to the agenda reading, proposed agenda. The reading, Mr. McDonald.
Okay, Commissioners, today on your agenda you have under consent agenda the approval of the San Juan County Board of Commissioners work session and commission meeting minutes for December 21st, 2021. The approval of the December 16th, 2021 through December 29th, 2021 check registers. You have the approval of the 2022 annual wildfire support budget agreement with the State of Utah Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands. You have approval of the small purchase of $3,195 for ZO2 mounts for EMS. Approval of Todd Westcott to fill the vacancy of the Monticello Cemetery Board. We have approval of the 2022 alcohol renewal applications for Vail Trading Post in Mexican Hat, San Juan Inn, and Trading Post, also in Mexican Hat. You have the approval, item number 7, approval of $7,320 Community Library Enhancement Fund contract with the State of Utah Department of Heritage and Arts. Under recognition, presentations, and informational items, you have an annual Open and Public Meetings Act and Government Record Access Management Act training. This will be our county attorney. Let's see, we've got Alex here. deputy county attorney that will be providing that training for all of the county. And then item number 9, 2022 conflict of interest statements. I think Alex is also going to touch on that as well in his training. Under item number 10 on your agenda, under business action items, you got consideration and approval of an ordinance amending ordinance 2021-11 of the San Juan County Board of Commissioners redistricting the Board of Commission and school board voting districts as required by Utah statute. Item 11, consideration and approval of the portable lift system purchase for heavy trucks and equipment by TJ Adair. Item 12, consideration and approval of a $30,000 contract with Safe Technology Solutions. Item 13, consideration and approval of a $5,500 contract with Express Evaluations, will be presented by Anne Marie. Item 14, consideration and approval of the contract for mass appraisal services for the assessor's office with the Appraisers Incorporated for $67,078. Then item 15, discussion and approval of the 2022 Board of San Juan County Commissioners Board Committee assignments, and I'll go through that with you. And then finally, you have your commission reports after that. That, Commissioners, is your agenda for today.
Okay. Thank
Motion.
you. Motion by Kenneth to approve the agenda.
Second.
Second by Mr. Adams. Any comment or question? Question on the number 10. Is there a legislative policy or legal requirements to consider the previous December 21st amendment to this document?
Is there a legal requirement? So
What's number 10?
the redistricting.
Because it's the school board map, you are legally fine.
Didn't hear.
Because it's the school board map, you're fine. If it was the other map, we'd have some issues, but because it's the school board map.
So did you understand that, or
I
with
didn't
the
fully understand. As I understood on the document that we approve, and on December 21st, it does indicate the commissioner's attachment A. In addition to that, it says school board, I forget the number on that, but the recommendation for Navajo Nation Human Rights Commission. So it seems to me that we are repeating the same action.
so this one, Commissioner, is an amendment to that. This was requested to bring this back onto the agenda. And so it's an amendment of the original ordinance. So I kept the same language of the original ordinance, including what you had passed in your motion to approve the commission option B map. But what was asked to bring back was the school district boundaries. And so that's what the amendment reflects. So in there, we kept all the language exactly the same. Recognize that you did make a motion approving option B for the commission districts. And then I left open the option of, which was what was asked, to reconsider those of the school board district. And so it's similar to exact language of what was passed before with this amendment. If you choose to continue to go forward with the amendment, then the only language difference is that of the school district boundary map. So it's literally
Okay.
just a reconsideration of the school district boundaries. Everything else for the commission district, I didn't even include the commission districts. It wasn't asked to bring the commission districts back for reconsideration. That one, it was only asked to bring back the school board district map.
Legally, is that
Yes. So we-
clear and defined?
yes, so,
Attachment A.
so with the school board maps, under Title 20A, this commission can amend those maps under its discretion. So where it was asked to be brought back, and Mac knows who asked to bring it back, it can be brought back for further discussion and amendment. The other map, the state code doesn't grant us that same authority, but for the school board maps, this board does have that authority, so it can be brought back for further discussion and possible amendment if this board so chooses.
So in essence, I'm looking at the county commission district. There is attachment A.
Correct. In that ordinance.
Attachment A, would there be room to amend and insert option B, attachment A, option B?
Yeah, for the school board map,
No, I'm not talking about the school board.
So if you look at that item, commissioners, in your packet, so you're on page 10, item 10, or sorry, page 59, item 10. And so if you look at page 59 in your binder, I could pull it up here as well, because I want to make sure that it's clear to you. Minimize this, pull this. So in the amended ordinance, I've gone through, included the same language other than last time you changed from precincts to districts, and so that has been changed in here. I've recognized in here that previously you had adopted and approved San Juan County Commission District at attachment A. And then on here, the only thing that you're voting on today is the attachment B, school board districts. And so when you look at the document itself, attachment A, from the last commission meeting, you voted and accepted option B as attachment A. So that's included in here. Attachment B, which is what you're considering today, is blank until you pick one of these to go in its place. And so I've already included what you approved last commission meeting as option B in attachment A of this ordinance, if that makes any sense. Hopefully that clears it up. So according to this ordinance, the only thing you're considering today is the attachment B, which is the school board districts, which is legal for you to do. And so it's stated right here, passed, adopted, and approved. The amendment and redistrict map incorporated within as attachment B, San Juan County school board districts by the commission on this date. So the commission districts, those we've already actually submitted to the state, so they can put on their mapping system. They're just waiting for the school board districts.
Mac,
Mr. Bearboy.
Mac, it sounds like there are some people in the waiting room that are willing to speak to the issue.
In the waiting room.
We're still on the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay, looks
The
like we
way-
have everybody in.
Now, the way I understand now is the attachment A dealing with the commission district is done and approved.
Correct. It's done and approved. And it's recognized in this ordinance as being done and approved.
The only thing that's lingering is the school board district.
Correct.
Okay. Well, let's write.
Okay.
Okay. With that understanding, and hopefully it will also be in the writing that there's no more comment or question on it.
Mhm.
All those in favor of the agenda, say aye.
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 Aye also. Oppose, a nay. 3 ayes, 0 opposed. Motion carries. With that, going to public comment.
Okay, it looks like we do have a couple here. Let me grab the paper real fast. Okay, on the public comments, just as a reminder, we'll allow you to provide a public comment for 3 minutes. Please keep within that 3 minutes. We'll be timing you. If you're online, there's a function where you can raise your hand on there. If you click on your name, right click on your name, you'll be able to raise your hand. We'll be able to recognize you if you're online for a public comment. There are 2 members in the audience who are wishing to speak today through public comment. The first one we have is Councilmember Kim Henderson. Kim, come on up.
Good morning. Happy New Year. I appreciate the commission revisiting agenda number 10 for the school district redistricting. I know that the commission can appreciate the importance of having the most local representation in any area on any subject. The closer people live logistically, the more they share in common. The Eastland community and the youth there attend school in Monticello, both elementary and high school. I think with that in mind, and with the options given, that it would make most sense, and I would encourage the commission to vote on, I believe it's option B, amended, which would allow the Eastland kids to have representation closest to them, which would be the person that represents in District 1, I believe. I think that that allows them to have the voices that they need to be heard for the things that are most important to them and most applicable to them in their education. So again, I would encourage the commission to vote for that, and I appreciate you revisiting this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next one on here is Todd Adair. I'm going to time him for sure. Hey, Todd.
I'm Todd Adair from Monticello. Excuse me. I live 5.5 miles east of town. Since the new districts were put in place years ago, my representative is out of Montezuma Creek for school board. So it's B modified that would leave the Eastland district in Monticello. The year that they put this in, our principal from Monticello High School lived in District 3 or 4 because of this districting. He wasn't even in his own district, and he was the principal of the school. And that can happen again. And so I urge the commission to look at option B modified to leave that little community. Like I say, I'm 5.5 miles east of town, and I'm not in the district that goes to Monticello. So thank you.
Thanks, TJ. Okay, I don't have anybody else signed up in here. Let's see. What do we have online? Not seeing any other hands raised. Looks like pretty low attendance. We must be doing something wrong. All right. If you're online, you wish to make a public comment, go ahead and unmute yourself and I'll recognize you. Just state your name and your address where you live in the county. Not seeing anybody unmute themselves. Commissioners, we'll turn it back to you to continue on with your agenda.
Okay. We'll go to consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve as read?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda, which I think is the first 7 items.
Correct.
Motion is on the floor to approve 7 items on the consent agenda. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Any comments or questions? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, nay. 3 in favor, 0 opposed. Motion passed. 7 items. Next,
Okay.
number 8.
Correct. This is our annual Open and Public Meetings Act and Government Records Access Management Act training. Turn the time over to.
I just have a question. Do we have a time limit on this?
No.
I think there's a 30-second time limit. Good morning, commissioners. It's the most wonderful time of the year. It's time for Grandma, Open Meetings Act, and other trainings.
Is that why these people are here, so they don't have to go again?
Probably. I know for Councilwoman Henderson, this will count for hers too.
Yes, perfect.
So, as you were aware, every year the state legislature requires all elected officials, boards, everybody else in the county to go through their annual Open Meetings Act and Grandma training, as well as conflicts of interest checks. And it is my wonderful pleasure every year to be the one to provide that training. I have thought of ways to try to make this more interesting.
And you do such a good job.
I try my best. I think next year I'm going to go with interpretive dance. So I'll start with Open Meetings Act. The way I prefer to do this, obviously, is if you have a question about anything, just interrupt me and ask your question, and I'll stop where I'm at and I'll jump straight to your question. Otherwise, just buckle in and we'll get through this as quickly, but I cannot promise painlessly as possible. So,
Good question.
yes.
The Open Meeting Act, when there is a need for executive session,
Mhm.
how does that when it's closed, a discussion is done, exit, how do you record the session?
So Duncan will keep a recording going. So what he will usually do is he will put a break in the open meeting recording so that there's a noted break. He will then start the recording again for the closed meeting. When the commission votes to go out of the closed meeting or the executive session, he'll put another break. And so when he does his minutes, he goes to where the break is. Then he does not take the minutes for the recorded, but he has to keep that recording. And then he will pick the minutes back up where the recording leaves the executive session and goes back in. So the county is required to keep that recording, but because it's a closed or an executive session, depending on there's the myriad of reasons that you can close it, it's maintained in case there's ever a need to inspect it. But it's not subject to, and we'll get to it in the grandma section, it's not subject to a grandma review either because it was a closed meeting. Really, it only becomes relevant if there's a lawsuit and somebody needs to look into that. So those are maintained in the clerk's office, and you probably have more of them than you have,
Sure.
and they're kept and they're categorized. So along those lines, as you all are aware, every board, every elected office, all of our meetings have to be open. They have to be published. We have to let the public know when we're taking action, what we're taking action on before we do it. The public bodies are defined by statute. Obviously, this commission and any board created by this commission falls under one of those public bodies. A meeting includes any quorum. So for the commission, it's when any two commissioners are together. For some of the other boards that are 5 or 7, it requires a simple majority. And they go into it. It includes any work meetings. It also includes any executive sessions. So an executive session is still subject to the recording requirements, even though those aren't published. The only thing that don't count as open meetings involving quorums are if by chance 2 commissioners happen to bump into each other at the grocery store, all of a sudden it did not create a quorum meeting. That being said, if you incidentally bump into each other, don't take the opportunity to start talking county business. Talk about something else, because if you start talking county business, then you are creating a meeting that should have been subject to the Open Meetings Act. So if you just bump into each other, that's fine. Sometimes people are related. Sometimes they go to the same church, they go to the same activities, they go to the same cultural events. There's nothing wrong. You don't have to notice up that you're going to the same event. If you both plan on going to the same rodeo, that's fine. It doesn't have to be noticed up as long as you're not discussing business there. The main thing to remember about the Open Meetings Act, it's a notice requirement. We just need to let people know when the boards are meeting. So Mac's really good. 24 hours notice is what's required for nearly every meeting. Mac's really good about getting that out. They did make a slight change to the notice requirements this year. It's a little bit easier. There used to be requirements for newspapers. They've waived that requirement now that we post it to the open meeting, to the Utah Public Notice website. We also post it regularly to our Facebook and other social media accounts. We're satisfying the requirements. They've lightened the load. It used to be that you had to post it on doors as well as publish it in the newspapers. They've realized that not every area has newspapers of general circulation anymore. So they've lightened that requirement. I believe we still, as a general practice, use the newspapers. I think we also want to support our local newspapers to keep it going. It doesn't cost as much to do anything like that. So we do it that way as well, but that's just us going above and beyond what's required of us under the new change in the law. The only other thing that's required for the agendas for this board as well as any other board is that the agenda has to provide reasonable notice as to what's going to be discussed. Our agendas can't simply say we're going to meet and have a discussion. It actually needs to list the items. As you went down yours today, obviously the 10 items that were, or the 16, I don't have my agenda in front of me. There's a large number of items. They're all very reasonable. People who read that know exactly what's going to be discussed, what's going to be possibly have action taken on today. The open meetings portion, not only do we have to record it, but the county clerk for the county has to keep the minutes. Any other secretary of any of the other boards have to keep minutes for their board meetings. So any of our special service districts, planning and zoning commission, they keep recordings as well as keep minutes. And those are both required under the statute. The written minutes do not have to be verbatim. They're just supposed to give it the idea of what action items were taken, any votes that were taken. Because the recordings are also posted to the public notice website, anybody who wants to get a verbatim transcript simply can go to the website and listen to the meeting in its entirety. This board also publishes its meetings on YouTube as well as Facebook, and those are maintained there for, I think we still have several years worth on there. They haven't made us take any down yet. So anybody from the public can easily access them there as well. So we keep our minutes or our recordings readily available to the public for anybody to review. One of the things that did change and that everybody in the state as well as across the country has taken advantage of are the electronic meetings. When COVID hit, we definitely started utilizing the electronics meetings provisions that were allowed under the statute. During the COVID times, we were not necessarily required to have an anchor location because COVID was meant to keep everybody away from everybody else. Where things have changed and the state has altered I think we're in yellow right now. Our transmission levels, we are allowed to do these meetings. Typically, we use obviously the county seat as our anchor location, and that's mostly because this is where we have the facilities to handle everything. So the only thing that's really required for the electronic meetings is that there be an anchor location unless there is an emergency reason to not have an anchor location. But that does, if there's not an anchor location, Commissioner Gray Eyes, for this board, you're the chair. You would have to make a ruling stating we don't need an anchor location for this reason and provide it to MAC so that when he published the notice, people would realize that they weren't coming to this building for the anchor location. That anchor location can be somewhere else if this board chooses. Before COVID, you were doing meetings in other parts of the counties for example, when roads were being discussed on the south end, and that was particularly pertinent to the people down there. You could change your anchor location down there. If, for example, somebody couldn't make the drive, you could note that the anchor location would be down there because the topic was sensitive to a people in a particular location. Likewise, if a meeting was held in the Spanish Valley area for something very important for that area, you could change the location to there. It just needs to be properly noticed that has been done. It does require a notification from the chair that is taking place. One thing to remember, you are allowed to email each other and not create an open meeting, but you can't email everybody at the same time. So if you wanted, for example, if Commissioner Maryboy wanted to send Commissioner Adams an email, he doesn't have to submit a notice of an open meeting to say that he's sending an email to Commissioner Adams. He can send an email to Commissioner Adams. What the board needs to avoid doing is sending group emails and having group discussions with each other via email, because then you're creating an unanchored electronic meeting that would require proper notice. So you can email.
And those emails are grammable.
Yes, yes. And we'll get
that a
to,
word?
yeah, yeah, we'll go with grammable. And we'll get to that in the grandma training. The main thing to just remember, and I've told this to other boards before, and I'm pretty sure I told this board last year, just when you send emails to each other, you can send an email to everybody, but any responses should be individually, not to the group. Otherwise you're creating an electronic meeting. And CC any of your emails. If you do send an email to everybody, CC Mac on them, because that way Mac can send out a friendly reminder to say, hey, remember not to respond to everybody, so that you don't create an electronic meeting. Every now and then, a big unforeseen circumstance happens. For example, if a bridge or something were to get washed out and emergency funds or emergency permission were needed, you don't have to give 24 hours notice. The chair just needs to say, it's an unforeseen circumstance. This bad thing happened. We need to have a meeting right now to get this taken care of. And it waives the 24-hour notice requirement. The only difference is we just come in after the fact and provide the notice and say, we held an emergency meeting for this reason. This is what action was taken. And then at the following open meeting, we'll just reiterate what was done. It just takes care of it. The big question that everybody always runs into are the executive sessions or the closed sessions. There are a list of reasons that they can be closed. I'll just flip to that one right now. You can close a meeting for character, professional competence, physical health of an individual. You can close a meeting if you need to discuss collective bargaining. You can close a meeting for pending litigation or reasonably imminent litigation. You can close a meeting to discuss the purchase, lease, or sale of real property, especially if that discussion would put the county at a disadvantage in those negotiations if it were made public. You can close a meeting to discuss security, personnel, devices, or systems. It's actually the special one because that is the one where you can actually turn the recording off during the closed meeting as well. The only thing you have to do if you turn the recording off because you're discussing like building security, anytime the jail commander or the sheriff come over to discuss the jail, you can turn the recording off. The only thing that has to happen after that is the chair has to sign an affidavit that says, I promise that when we turn to the recording off, the only thing that we were discussing was jail security, building security, things of that nature. But if you move on to something else, you immediately need to turn that recording back off or back on. The investigations, any criminal proceedings can be, discussions about those can be in a closed meeting. And there's a few others that apply to higher education procurement. This board won't really have to deal with those, I guess, unless the college comes in and wants to have a joint discussion with you about something they're planning on doing. The main thing to remember is that you need to do a roll call vote to go into a closed meeting. You cannot take any action items in a closed meeting. So you can't take a vote of any sort about what you're going to do. You're just allowed to go into the meeting to have the discussion, and the only vote inside the executive or closed meeting is then the vote to go back out. Once again, do those by roll call vote. And usually if you need to take an action item on something that was discussed, you don't need to go into the details of what was discussed. You simply vote. If, for example, if it was something about, let's go with the jail, for example, the need to do a purchase for additional cameras in the jail, for example, you'd have the entire discussion in the closed meeting. You'd come into the open meeting and you'd vote, we hereby authorize the expenditure of funds for cameras. Nothing about the discussion itself makes its way into the vote, just simply the action item that was requested. There are a couple things you can never do in a closed meeting. So you can't ever approve an ordinance, a resolution, a contract, the appointment of a position. Those can never happen in a closed meeting. You can't interview a person to fill an elected position. So if there's a vacancy and somebody has to fill an elected position, that cannot happen in a closed meeting. And You can't take any final action inside of a closed meeting. If somebody violates this, so if one of our boards, for example, violates open meeting, they didn't get their agenda out 24 hours in advance, they talked about something that wasn't on an agenda, what happens? Usually what happens is the attorney's office gets a call from somebody who's complaining. We can usually fix it. It's usually simply a matter of going back and having that noticed properly, have a new meeting called, and take care of it. We had to correct. I don't think we had to correct any last year. I think in 2020 there was one that we had to correct one time where something was discussed that wasn't on an agenda item with one of our boards, and we just said nope, put it back on the agenda for the next meeting, and go through the vote again. So they just fixed the problem, and so it's not bad. The only thing to be aware of is if somebody's intentionally violating it over and over and over again, having meetings that their boards are meeting when they're not supposed to be meeting, things of that nature, and it can be proven to be intentional. There are criminal penalties that attach to that. If you take an action and you don't remedy it, somebody can file a complaint and they can void the action. So at the end of the day, it's easier just to comply with OPMA because they'll just undo what you wanted done anyway. So if there's a violation, don't just think, oh, well, let's just keep it hush hush and we'll fix it. Just let us know. We can, they're OPMA violations are easy to fix. So just let us fix them. And the one other thing, and we haven't really had this problem up north. They've had this problem far more frequently. Just because a meeting has to be open doesn't mean the public gets to come in and be disruptive. Somebody, if they keep interrupting, keep preventing the meeting from going forward. The Open Meetings Act doesn't mean that we can't remove a disruptive influence. They can be removed. There's no right to be in a meeting if you're going to be disruptive. You still have to follow the orders of decorum. So are there any questions about the Open Meetings Act?
Yes. Of course. I don't know if this is covered under Open Meetings Act, but it relates to the agenda that we have. Is there any state statute that requires the commission to have a public comment section on their agenda?
Yes, but it depends on the agenda items. So there are certain items where public hearings are mandated. You have to have a public hearing.
I'm not talking public hearings.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just talking public comment period on the agenda. See, at the beginning of our agenda, we have a public comment.
Mm-hmm.
Are we required to allow the public to make comment on the agenda items at every commission meeting?
So the answer to that is
Maybe.
I'll give you the lawyer answer, which is yes and no. So you do not have to, for example, you don't have to allow comment on every item. There is nothing that says, well, now who wants to comment on item 2? Who wants to comment on item 3? Who wants to comment on item 4? However, there may be something on the agenda that require, for example, 1 through 7, there's no public hearing requirement, no public comment requirement, but maybe number 8 does. So really it's going to depend on what is on your agenda as to whether or not there's a public comment requirement. Obviously, from a good governance standpoint, giving the public an opportunity to comment is always a good idea. However, we've done it before where you can require them to be in writing. You don't have to require it to be oral. You can say any public comments need to be submitted in writing X amount of time before the meeting. There's no requirement that says you have to allow verbal comment at every meeting.
The reason I asked the question is because in conversation with other commissioners at UAC meetings and so forth, some commissioners say they have a public comment similar to San Juan, and others say they do not ever have a public comment.
And so back to what I was discussing about the problem being up north.
Yeah.
They've closed a lot of their public comment periods because it just became a source of disruption. you'd spend 4 or 5 hours and never get through the public comment period.
Yeah.
This commission has the ability to limit them, has the ability to close them off entirely, so long as there's not something on the agenda that mandates it be open. So you have all the control over that you want if there's nothing that requires there to be a hearing. If you want to do it, run it by, if there's ever a time you feel like you need to close one, run it by Mac. He'll run it by our office. The only thing to be just careful of if you choose to close public comments entirely would be for us to check the agenda, because perhaps there's something on the agenda that doesn't specifically require a public hearing, but we can see that further down the line it's going to require a public hearing. Then it just becomes a question of what triggers that actual requirement at this point or that time. So if you felt like there was just a disruptive influence over a specific topic and there's no public hearing requirement and it's just going to get in the way, you can motion or request the public hearing to be closed. Obviously, the commission has to vote on the agenda and they can amend the agenda. So if 2 commissioners say, we're fine with the public comment going forward, even if there's going to be disruption, then they vote to amend the agenda to allow it. And if 2 commissioners say, you know what, this is getting out of control, I motion to close the public comment period because this is going nowhere fast, this is getting disruptive, this is getting uncivil, you can motion to close it immediately. There's nothing that requires you to have it unless there's something specific on the agenda. And even if you have it and you don't have to have it and it's getting disruptive, you can motion to close it.
It gets a little technical when you allow public comment, and sometimes there's a large amount of public that want to comment on one issue. And even though we tell them, please don't repeat what the last person said, or the 2 or 3 people in front of you, don't say the same thing. We've heard it once and we don't need to hear it 8 or 10 times. How do you control that?
So that would be a really good circumstance where you usually have a good idea of when a hot topic is hitting the agenda. That's a really good one where you can say any comments on item number 2 need to be in writing. Just give it to us in writing. We don't have time for 45 people to provide to provide the same 3-minute comment.
Yeah.
This board usually, you've had a couple, but nothing that's been too crazy out of control. A couple of our other boards have had some other hot topics where they've asked people, you're not saying anything new, please move on.
Well, I know we've had public comments sometimes that went more than an hour.
Yeah.
Sometimes it goes an hour and a half, close to 2 hours.
And you can
we have an agenda to get to, and we spend 2 hours of the agenda listening to public comment on one item with people saying virtually the same thing.
Yep. And you can even change that. This board and any board has the power they want to control their meetings. You can simply change it and say, by a show of hands or by a show of this, how many are wanting to comment on this specific comment? Yeah. And then just say, okay, how many are opposed to us taking action on this? And just do a hand vote. And then everybody doesn't have to come up and make the same comment. You can also limit it. Right now you grant 3 minutes. You can say 30 seconds. Like we need to move on. There's lots of things you can do. It's always that political balance between getting the input you need and actually being able to move on with the item. There are times, and this is always something that's available to you as well, which is not all the hot topic items don't always have to have action taken on them at that point in time. There may be a deadline, there may not be a deadline. If there's not a deadline, you can motion to remove it from the agenda and set it for a time when you have more time to take all those comments, or ask all the people who want to comment on those to submit those in writing.
Mr. Chair?
Vice Chair or Chair?
Kenneth wants to talk.
Go ahead, Ken.
I think that's one of the reasons why I've mentioned to at a certain point probably make a motion to get the public comment off because it is getting out of hand. I know that when I was the chair, when it comes down to personal attack on the commission, I put a stop to it. But now it seems like it's just a continuation of a personal attack instead of making a comment. So there's a huge difference. So at some point in time, it seems like we're going to have to do away with that because just like you said, it's really not written in a policy that we have to have it. Or I think it's just a courtesy of the commission to recognize the public to make comments on what they need to say. And if they could stick to that issue, I think there's no problem. But other than that, just taking a personal attack on the commission itself, I mean, we're up for a beating, yes, but that doesn't mean that every Dick and Jane should come out and do that. And I like that comment. And thank you for that update.
The only thing, just as a final touch up to this topic, since it's been brought up, is whatever this board chooses to do or whatever any board chooses to do, consistency is key. It can't be used as a favoritism tool to only hear the voices you want. If you're going to stop them, you have to stop all of them. If you're going to allow them, you kind of have to allow all of them. Like I said, the one question, and Commissioner Adams brought this up, if they're just repeating the same thing over and over and over and over again, you might either motion to just say, look, by a show of hands, how many agree with that statement? By a show of hands, how many agree with that statement? And just do a count, or start limiting it from 3 minutes to 30 seconds. It's not because you're being mean. It's because you have an agenda that you need to get to, and you can't necessarily be here for 7 or 8 hours. So, but like I said, my recommendation would be, if you know there's a hot topic coming up, just ask Mac to request comments to be put in writing before the meeting. And that way you can say, we've received the written comments as was put on the public notice. And then you have received comments. It gives you a chance to read them all, so you have an idea of what the people are wanting to say, but you're not necessarily slowing your agenda up either. So those are all options that are available to this board or to any board. Is everybody ready for Grandma?
Can I just ask a question?
Is that okay, Chair? Well, he has to say it's okay.
Does it say public?
Doesn't say public. No, Q is good.
Because I'm an elected official.
I can answer it for you later.
Okay.
So, okay. So moving on to Grandma. The main thing to remember about Grandma is that anything you do on behalf of the county, regardless of how you do it, if a record is created, and a record is anything in writing, if it's a text message, if it's an email, if it's by carrier pigeon on a little slip of paper, any of those things, those become the county's property. The county is obligated by statute to keep those. So you have to provide those to our wonderful county clerk for this board. Other boards have their own records officers. The sheriff's office has their own records officer. The attorney's office handles ours internally, except for the appeals from any Grandma request for us. Everybody else uses the clerk. He has hard drives upon hard drives upon hard drives of records. When those items are created, the main thing to remember is it's not necessarily your job to classify them. So, prime example is a couple of years ago, we had somebody who requested all communications between one board member and one employee in the county who happened to be father and son. And that means they had some text messages and emails between each other that were county business. And they had a whole pile of, hey, are you coming over for dinner on Sunday? And how's mom doing? And a whole bunch of information along those lines. It is not the county, it is not the employee's job to determine which ones are responsive records and which ones aren't. They had to turn over all the records And then the grandma officer goes through those and classifies which ones are protected, which ones are responsive, which ones are not. So for this board and for most everybody in the county, they turn those over to the clerk's office. The clerk's office will probably have some follow-up questions. What's the context? What is this about? And in order to, so that they can help classify them. Our office, because we handle our own, we classify our own. The sheriff's office classifies our own. We do field a lot of phone calls from other boards, occasionally from the clerk's office over, we're not quite sure how this should be classified, and they'll ask the attorney's office for some advice on it. There was a statewide one regarding voting records very recently. Every county in the state got one, and every county attorney in the state was dragged into that conversation because it was a new type request. So those are just, the rule is you turn over the record to the county clerk. He'll get them classified. If you need to provide some context or sit down with him and help him go through it. If you don't want to have to turn over your phone, you can just walk in and flip through your text messages and he can take pictures of them so that you don't have to go without your phone for a day while they try to pull everything off of it. It doesn't matter if it's a personal phone. It doesn't matter if it's a county phone. Any records that are county related on it, those do need to be preserved. Rule number 1 about grandma, never delete anything. If you delete it, it's so much worse when it gets deleted. So just don't ever delete anything. Keep it. I know our IT gets really upset about some of the size of our email files, but the rule is never delete anything. We keep them as long as we can. There is a records retention schedule that we're allowed to follow. Predominantly, if we destroy a record, there's a way that we have to mark that it was destroyed. There's certain protocol that we have to follow. There's usually a 10-year rule with a bunch of exceptions that say even if it's more than 10 years old, you have to keep all of these types of records. Our office right now is going through records back in 1996, trying to determine which ones we can and can't keep, and we're hopeful by the end of the year that we might be through 1998 on which ones we've kept. So just keep everything. An important thing to remember is anything that happens in an open meeting. So if you get a text message during one of our open meetings, congratulations. That text message is now something that the county has to keep because it was held during a board meeting and you have to keep it. So don't text each other during open meetings. If you need to have a conversation with each other, just have a verbal conversation with each other so that we don't have to say, hey, and we also need that text message that you sent to, if one board member shoots a text message to another board member, hey, can you believe this? Well, congratulations, that text message, hey, can you believe this? You might have seen it. You might have saw the article in the news about not quite a year ago. There were some commissioners in Salt Lake County who were sending some pretty derogatory texts about one of their other board members while that person was talking. And somebody who was watching the TV screen was like, hey, those two are, I can see them laughing back and forth to each other about whatever they're texting to each other. So grandma requested those records. Those board members said, hey, you don't get those. And the attorneys and everybody came in and the court said, oh, yes, you do. And every derogatory text that was said became part of the public record. And it was really embarrassing for them. And I'm sure it made it really hard to work together. So just don't email or text message each other during open meetings. If you need to say something to each other, just turn and say it to each other so that we don't have to go through the grandma process over those. For this board, because you don't need to worry about classifying your records, I won't go into too much detail about it. You'll just turn it over to the clerk and they'll get those records classified for you. There is a giant pile of reasons, though, why a record is not public. So there's a presumption that all records are public unless there's a specific statute that says that it's not. So voting records, for example, clerk's office gets requests for voting records all the time. Voting records have a million different statutes that say, here's all the voting records that you can never get your hands on. And so we get grandma requests for election material all the time, and a lot of that's just not allowed under the election code. However, a lot of the other things that we get, we do need to turn over, but there are 3 categories. There's controlled records, private records, and protected records. Controlled records are typically along the lines of medical type information, things of that nature, lots of things that the health department might keep. Those have their own rules for those never ever get released. Private records have a lot of other material. That's a lot of security, stuff about the jail, the sheriff's office, open investigations, things of that nature. Those are usually fall under private. And then you hit the protected records section, which if you've ever looked at the statute, I mean, if they still put it in books, it'd probably be 3 pages of the double lined. Here's all the different ways. And that's really what your grandma records officer spends most of their time doing, is seeing which one falls under which of the protected records, because there's a lot of subsections and subsections inside those subsections for those. Anybody who requests those submits the grandma request to the county, will go to the clerk unless they're requesting a record from the county attorney's office or requesting a record from the sheriff's office. Then they have to submit those to either of those entities. A couple of the other boards as well have their own grandma officers. So our special service districts, for example, they have to submit a grandma request to the actual special service district, not to the county, because they have their own records retention. So they go through there. There are fees that attach, particularly to very large requests. Sometimes we'll choose to waive those fees, but sometimes people ask for, I want the last 8 years of this type of record. Well, we're talking thousands upon thousands of pages. We're talking somebody has to go through every single one of those records, find where every possible record is, every old email account from every employee who might have left in those 8 years. Takes a lot of time. There are fees that can be associated with that. We'll usually send them a response back that says, we'll get it to you, but it's going to cost you $3,000. Do you want to narrow your request down? And they usually do. Every now and then they'll say, no, there's a reason you should waive the fee. It's a process we go through. Every now and then we do deny a records request if somebody wants to appeal that. Mac is the appeal officer for everybody in the county, so he gets every appeal for grandma. Even from the sheriff's office, from our office, they do go to him, and he'll go through that same process all over again. So are there any questions about grandma? The one thing just to remember about grandma, most people don't try to violate it. They usually just say, oh, we didn't think to check. We forgot that this employee worked for us and that we had access to that email account. Sorry. Usually we can just correct that by going and realizing. And normally the requester knows what they're looking for, and they'll be like, hey, you didn't check so-and-so's email account. I'll be like, oh, sorry, yeah, we didn't even think about that. So we'll go and we'll check it. But intentional violations where you're purposely hiding information that should be revealed or turned over during grandma, there are criminal sanctions if it is intentional. So the main thing to remember there is turn it all over to the county clerk. And if you need to provide some context for anything, just sit down with him and provide the context so he knows how to properly classify it. But let him do all the legwork. Your job is just to say, here it all is. Good? Okay. The last one, just the conflicts of interest. You are doing your annual forms this year. It is required for all elected officials to go through this, as well as a couple of others. I think, Mac, you have to do one, don't you?
Yeah.
So, yep. So, the main thing to remember about your conflicts of interest is don't accept anything from anybody if it has any real value. As long as you follow that rule, you're usually pretty good. The term is quid pro quo. Don't do anything. I mean, even if you're accepting it for the most innocent of reasons, just think about it like, hey, somebody who doesn't know me and doesn't know this person, they might not know that I have a 40-year relationship with this person and that this has nothing to do with my official job, because it's the optics. It's the optics that matter. What does it look like? And so just avoid the appearance of anything that goes through that. if somebody says, hey, we've been friends for 40 years and, I'll say this to you and we've been friends for a long time, so I'll give you a discount. Well, the discount you might realize is because you've been friends for 40 years, but nobody else knows that you've been friends for 40 years. And it looks like they might be giving you a discount so that you'll do something favorable for them later. And so just make sure that anything along those lines that you're disclosing. The wonderful thing about the conflicts of interest is there are very few conflicts of interest that prohibit you from voting on an item as long as they're disclosed. So the rule should always be, if in doubt, disclose it. Say, by the way, I owe so-and-so this much money, or so-and-so owes me this much money. The rule there is $2,000. If there's anything, if you owe anybody or anybody owes you something more than $2,000, you should probably put that on your conflict of interest form, just in case they ever show up here and they're asking for something, so that everybody can be like, oh, okay, there's a relationship there that does have a financial base. It doesn't necessarily prevent you from voting on it, especially if you disclosed it. And if that disclosure was a long time ago, has been every year for years and years and years, and then finally 3 years into your term, somebody pops up, it prevents it from looking anything other than just, hey, yeah, there's just an old relationship there. So like I said, just make sure to disclose if you're in doubt. That being said, if somebody buys you a $50 Christmas present or a birthday present, that's fine. The statute realizes that you probably have relationships with people, and people are allowed to buy you a birthday present, or they can buy you a Christmas present, or they can buy you a present, as long as it's not anything that's regular, and it can't be worth more than $50. There were a couple cases in the news. I don't know if they actually hit the news or not. It was something that we were aware of. A couple of employees up in one of the northern counties ended up getting fired because they were accepting sports tickets every year from the same entity, and they were never disclosing it. And those sports tickets were worth way more than $50, and it was happening pretty regularly. They ended up losing their jobs because they'd never disclosed that was happening, and that they were violating the $50 rule on that one. So just make sure that you're disclosing anything along those lines. The other thing to just be aware of is if there are any boards or any private entities. Sometimes you sit on a board of directors or something for another private entity. Make sure you're disclosing those. Those are the types of things where you might have to recuse yourself from a vote. So and we don't deal with it here because we're not by a lot of big corporations necessarily here, but a lot of times elected officials sit on bank boards, other type boards, and they're brought in because they're just well known in the community, and they want people well known in the community sitting on their board of directors. Well, you do need to disclose those in case that entity ever does come in front of you for a request or anything along those lines. And that is one that would require you to recuse yourself if you're sitting in a dual capacity where, hey, not only am I a member of this board, but I'm a member of that board, or I was a member of that board for however long, just to make sure that you're keeping yourself out of trouble. Like I said, on your conflicts of interest, the more you put on there, the safer you are. So just make sure, if you're in doubt, put it on there.
I'll see.
I agree.
Question.
Yeah.
Let's say I sit on the board and the county contracts with that entity that I'm sitting on. Then I would have to recuse.
It would depend on what that board is. So if it's a board that the county wants you to sit on or has appointed you to sit on, then you don't have to recuse yourself. But if it's a nonprofit or some unrelated entity to the county, you may or may not have to recuse yourself. It's going to depend on, is there a financial benefit? But the main thing you need to do is declare the conflict. You need to say, I sit on this board, and in my capacity on this board, I voted in favor of it. Okay. Well, then maybe you shouldn't be voting in that board and on this other board. Maybe you should recuse yourself. But if you recused yourself for whatever reason on the other board, then the question might be open, is it an impermissible conflict? Because not all conflicts are necessarily require you to abstain. They just might require you to disclose. And the easiest answer to that is abstention is always the safest way to go. If you abstain, then you're always out of the trouble, but you're always out of trouble. But if you feel like, no, there's no financial incentive, there's nothing here, I feel this is something that I do want to vote on, let us know well ahead of time, because we can go through the rules and say, this is one that if you declare it, you can still vote on it, or no, there's no way you can ever vote on it. But if you just call our office ahead of time or email our office ahead of time,
Yeah.
we'll go through the code and we'll let you know what kind of conflict it is.
The situation, right, whereby the organization will benefit,
So
not
that's,
individually
Okay.
myself.
yeah. And so that would be one, and it's really hard because they're so specific. That would be one where you might have to abstain, but there are I can think of a couple of reasons off the top of my head, depending on what vote was being asked for, where a declaration is all you would need to say. I'm letting you all know I have this conflict, but I feel that for this reason, I'm still allowed to vote. And we'd give you the statutory site that says under this code, you could, as long as you declare it, you're okay. And so the answer is because every situation is so specific, because it's going to be the specific goals of the organization, the specific vote that's being asked for. The worst thing you can do is just not tell anybody. Because if you don't tell anybody and then somebody brings it up later or contests it later, then it looks bad. Whether your intentions were bad or not, it looks bad. So bringing it up ahead of time and making sure we go through all the checks. And if we come back and we say, yeah, you probably should abstain, it's not because we're being mean or anything else. We're trying to protect you. We protect any board member that way. For example, we run into it, and I'll try not to use any names, but planning and zoning boards run into this all the time because people in planning and zoning have to meet certain requirements to even sit on that board. But those requirements usually mean they're involved in one of several industries that have to go in front of that board a lot. They're constantly having to recuse themselves from specific votes because either they own property or they've put in a bid for a project or things on that nature, or the guy who's doing the building is an old partner of theirs. And so there's lots of times where they have to abstain. They declare the conflict and they have to abstain. There have been some times when they've abstained when I've been sitting in the room and I've said, all you had to do on that one was declare and you would have been fine. You still could have voted. But they chose to abstain just to keep themselves safe. So really, for the specific situations that come up, if there is a board you sit on and you have a question about, hey, this is coming up on our future agenda, shoot us an email. We can do those checks. It doesn't take us very long, and we'll get you a response right back. Always a pleasure every year.
Okay, thank you.
Socks.
Moving on.
All right. That takes care of items 8 and 9. Under business action item, we're on item number 10, consideration and approval of an ordinance amending ordinance 2021-11 of the San Juan County Board of Commissioners, redistricting the Board of Commission and school board voting districts as required by Utah statute. So as we discussed earlier, this is just an amendment. Only thing that we are considering at this time is re-looking at the school board district boundaries that you considered last commission meeting. So the ordinance and everything reflects that. Last commission meeting, you did vote on option B for the commission districts. That's already recognized in this amendment to the ordinance that has already vote has taken place. So all you're considering is the other school board boundary options. I've placed them in the packets for your reconsideration. So you're looking at the Navajo Nation School Board district proposals with their statistics on there. You have an option B modified as well in here for your consideration with the statistics in there as well. You have option A, school district, and the statistics that represent that one. And then option B, school board district as well. So the we can either go through and discuss each one. Obviously, some of the discussions in the past when you were looking at population totals, Navajo Nation has done a great job of trying to get as close as to that one person, one vote. In some of the public comments today, you had also heard a recommendation for option B modified. Kind of the differences that we discussed last time between the two is option B modified is kind of a plan that was requested by the school board members themselves to align the school district boundaries more representative of the schools that are in those districts. And so in option B modified, you see that those boundary changes, like what was mentioned in our comments earlier, where residents in our Eastland area found themselves in the past in District 4. District 4 representatives are typically down in Montezuma Creek. And so where District 1, they would really like District 1 to be adjusted to include those students that go to Monticello High, Monticello Elementary School. So that's why you see this option B modified, is it keeps more in line with the schools that the students attend, so that if you do have a problem and you're in those districts with your school, then those district representatives know more what the issues are and concerns are with those schools within that area. This still does recognize the fact that there's a carve out, that tooth in Grand County. That hasn't changed, but we do need to recognize why there's that little white area up to the north. Any comments or concerns? I'll turn it over to you, commissioners, to discuss. I did invite William Cooper, our consultant, on here. He had a conflict with the time, but if we need him, we can always reach out to him by phone.
Mr. Adams.
I spoke with the superintendent who had spoken with the representatives, the school board representatives, and the representative of District 4 is LCD, who lives in Montezuma Creek. And she indicated to him that she did not know any people in Eastland and was not comfortable that she was representing the people in Eastland, the children in Eastland, and the parents there as being part of her district. And she had no problem with modifying the school district boundaries to include Eastland in District 1 rather than in District 4, because she felt like they would those people out there would receive better representation. Not that she doesn't want to do her job or anything. She just says that's not a community of interest for her because she lives down in Montezuma Creek and represents students in that area and on the reservation. So I think there's support for the commission to change the school board district plan to option B modified, which simply puts those Eastland students and those kids east of Monticello all in District 1. So, if that's what we want to do, I'd be in support of that.
That your motion?
Yeah, I'll make that motion that we amend our school district map to option B modified.
Is there a second to the motion? The motion is made by Mr. Adams to amend the previous motion whereby it states for San Juan School District plan that was submitted by Navajo Nation Human Rights Commission. Now, therefore, to be replaced with Plan B, option B of the school
Modified.
district, Plan B modified,
Yeah.
whereby it would have students from Eastland be included in District 1
Mm-hmm.
rather than having representation that would be from District 4.
Right.
So those changes would allow representation and student access to San Juan County, Monticello School District. So without any further question, I believe the ordinance in this consideration alludes to that and not San Juan County Redistricting Commission.
Right.
So with that understanding, do I hear a second to the motion? I will go ahead and second to the motion because I believe it's just the right thing to do at this time. So with that amendment, I will call for the vote. Those that are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye also. Those that oppose, nay.
Nay.
Okay. 2 in favor, 1 opposed. Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay. see here. So, commissioners, the next item on your agenda is item number 11. Consideration and approval of a portable lift system purchase for heavy trucks and equipment. This presentation will be given by TJ Adair, our road superintendent.
Good morning, commissioners.
Good
This is a lift system that'll lift up our blades, our trucks, to lift them up in the air to work on them. We have this system in the north shop. They've been using it since 2014. We don't have it in the south shop. We use a pit in the south shop. Pits have been increasingly more dangerous. You have some confined space permitting where you're in a hole with could be poisonous vapors, things like that. And so I'm recommending that we go with the same system that we've been using in the north shop, in the south shop for those mechanics down there, and then eliminate our pit. Our insurance companies are in favor of that because it's a liability to have that pit, and increasingly more on new buildings and stuff, they're eliminating the pit system. And so that's what I'm asking for today, is to get the same system that we already have in the south shop, and then we're compatible with the programming and everything. So it's the training and everything is already there.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion? I'll second the motion. Any question or comment? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye also. Mr. Berrybull also has aye. Opposed, nay. 3 in favor, 0 opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right.
Next,
Consideration and approval of a $30,000 contract with Safe Tech Solutions. This presentation is with Scott, our EMS director.
Good morning, Commission. We're looking at doing this assessment of our department. It's going to help us better with our training, and our staffing module, or model. It's a 3-phase program. The first phase is come down, do a meet and greet with all of the staff, along with yourself, the commission, the county admin, and I believe they go to the sheriff's office, hospitals, and whoever we work with, they go through and talk to them. And then the second phase would be they would analyze their data that they collected from the initial visit, and then they would develop a plan to help us produce or implement what they found that would be able to help us on our staffing and training and overall viability for the county. And then phase 3, they come down and with a written plan, and we go through it as staff and with you guys again to implement it. And they create kind of a plan of, a 5-year plan, 10-year plan. It kind of depends on where they see we're at. Jeremy has been through one of these when he was previously employed with Grand County. It helped Grand County a great deal on their EMS system of what they're going to do for the future growth of the department. Do you have anything else?
Do you have any questions?
Do you have any questions? Yeah.
This was a
Still
grant.
don't know what we're doing. I mean, they're going to come down. Who is they?
Safe Tech Solutions is a company. This is what they specialize in. Is they look at the national trend with EMS through the United States is that rural EMS systems are failing. They're losing the volunteers that carried this system for years and years and years and years. It's a proven fact. It's happening here. It's happening everywhere. It's not just Utah. It's everywhere in the United States. So this company has developed this assessment to go in and help organizations identify like where they could make changes and help administrators know like what those changes might look like, or they can go in and help us look for additional funding. They could help us look for things that me and Scott and Mac and you, like, we don't know where to go look for that. This company specializes in helping rural EMS systems maintain their stability and to be able to sustain themselves moving into the future.
So it's an evaluation. It's like
Okay,
they'll come down, give us a report card,
$30,000.
and that's covered by a grant,
Yeah,
so
it's-
it's
Oh.
not out of a
it's grant
county
funding.
budget. But this will tell us, are we the right size, right shoe, right fit?
It might tell you, is
Our
the
entire
county
program.
the right place to have this?
Yeah.
Should it be over here? Should it be over there? They're going to look at this from an outside perspective with the new set of eyes, and hopefully, be able to guide us down the right path that we can sustain ourselves. Because quite frankly, and be brutally honest with you, if you don't change something, you're not going to have an EMS system, 5-10 years from now. I can guarantee you that. Without making some degree of change. What we've done the last 20 years is not going to sustain us for the next 20. This company would help us be able to identify some of those things that we need to possibly change to move us forward into the future.
So yeah, this is all part of a grant award that we received, not only this portion, but also some of the equipment that we purchased recently. That was all funded from a grant that staff put in and received the funds for. This was specifically targeted for this evaluation to come forth. It'll be interesting to see what their recommendations will be. I'm sure, as you go through and you evaluate your program, there will be recommendations, especially where they're coming from a national purview. They bring with that the education and experience, everything that's taken place outside of San Juan County. Kind of
Utah and further,
the best of all worlds, and how does that apply, and can it fit here in San Juan County? And so it'll be interesting to see that. What are we doing? And hopefully, I'm sure they will point out the good things that are taking place, but as well as here's some opportunities that we can adjust to make things better. One of the things that we'll be looking at is our billing and payment system. Is that the best? And what areas can we improve on that to try to help stop some of the write-offs, that we continue to go through. And so it's kind of all inclusive of the program.
Was there recent legislation from the state that mandated cities to decide what ambulance service or something that they wanted?
There was a House bill that was approved and passed.
Has the cities done that?
Well, the cities are just supposed to not be the ones providing the ambulance service. They're supposed to say, there's an ambulance service here. We're happy with it. We're not going to go out and support our own ambulance service. That's what it's for.
Yeah, so that hasn't taken place. The cities are aware. We talked about that during the budget. They're supposed to declare, and here, there's not any other options. It's us, it's the county. So there's supposed to be an agreement that's entered in, but from the cities to the county for ambulance services. Up north along the Wasatch Front, where they have multiple, those cities need to select who their provider is. We haven't entered into any agreements yet with any of our cities, but it's something that we need to discuss with them.
And my goal with this, Bruce, this group would be that they can help us do that, so that it doesn't come across as this sledgehammer saying you need to pay this much money, which nobody has. The county doesn't have extra money. The cities don't have extra money. We don't have extra money, but it would help us. These guys can help us drive down this road and find the funding opportunities that are out there to hopefully keep us sustainable.
Is the grant secured? Are we 100% sure we got the 30,000?
We
from the grant?
received the check from the legislation last year at 147,000. It's what we purchased 2 monitors with last year, our UTV last year, our UTV trailer, the Zoll mounts that was just approved this morning, this, and then the rest of the money goes to the altercation to the UTV to make it patient transport ready for the trails.
So that 30,000 was in that
Yes.
money,
Yes.
That we've already received.
and we've got the 30,000. We haven't spent it.
Nope.
Nope. And it's got to be, where it's a federal grant, everything is reportable back to the feds. You
Okay.
do not want to spend that money out on something different. They make you account for everything.
So, question. $30,000 that we can contract with an outside agent to evaluate and give us recommendations how to go forward. Does that mean we don't have the capability of self-evaluation?
Not to the level these guys provide.
If you're in the business, I assume, never been in the business,
Yeah.
you do your, in the private business, you do your self-evaluation.
Yeah.
They do self-evaluation in the
I don't see.
This
Does
is
the recommendation that they submit come with the dollars? That's another question. The recommendations that they make to us, will they put dollars on top of it so we can?
They will help us find the dollars to provide for the department.
The recommendation that they made does come with a $30,000 grant to pay this company to come in and do the evaluation. Is that what you're asking?
No.
Yeah, it does.
$30,000 is what we will be paying this
Yes.
entity
Right.
from the
to
grant.
come in, do evaluation of our operation, then give us some recommendations as to where to look for these dollars beyond the mountains.
Yeah.
Hopefully, if we're successful, then we can
Yeah.
pull those dollars in.
Yes.
Very much.
So, I
But there's no additional money required of the county to do this evaluation because they already have the grant money
okay.
to pay for that.
Okay. If it's grant money
It is
that
grant
we're
money.
using, then
Yep.
I changed my vote.
You're okay. You're okay if it's grant money. Though.
Yeah. It
You're
is
okay
grant
with
money.
spending someone else's money?
Yes, certainly. Cheryl's money.
Any other questions?
It is a lot of money. That's one thing I want to say. I mean, it is a
Yeah.
lot of money. I can see, some hesitation. Honestly, I mean, I don't think EMS really asks for very much. We as a group have sat down with our group of 45, and there's nobody within our group that disagrees that this is the right way to go. So I know, your limited understanding of like where we are might make this you might be kind of hesitant. And if it wasn't grant money, I can promise that right now we probably wouldn't be moving forward. But I feel confident in the fact that this company can help us, even if we don't take all their suggestions or any of them. If we can at least identify some of the challenges, which I don't think we're doing right now. I mean, we are grossly underfunded for what EMS is. I mean, traditionally, or moving with the systems through the state and the nation. I mean, we're $10 an hour. When I did the quick math, less pay with our EMS personnel than our surrounding area. And when you look at that, it's not the people that are here and they're amazing providers. But how do we attract new people to come here to work for us when the people that are here either burn out or quit or have to move on to something else? I mean, what's the county's plan to do that? And hopefully this company can help us. I mean, that's the name of it is sustainability assessment. How do we sustain ourselves moving forward? And I think that's the biggest challenge we have, and it's a question that nobody in this room can answer. So, I mean, it's time we bring somebody else in that can help us answer that question.
And this group of people that put this company together are EMTs, paramedics from the private world. They've ran private, they ran government side, and they've put this together as fellow EMTs and paramedics, so they understand our side. They understand the budget side. It's not just a private company coming to do this. This is actual invested individuals, because they're still actively running on ambulance services in between doing these.
So they didn't burn out from the ambulances and form this new company?
No,
not yet.
They're actively running on ambulances.
Okay.
And they're from Minnesota?
Mm-hmm.
They're coming out here to get warm.
Yeah, for sure.
So
I'm satisfied with this request, Commissioner.
Okay. So, do I hear a motion?
I'll make the motion, we approve the request.
Motion.
I'll second it.
Kenneth, motion. Second by Mr. Adams. There's no further question. Call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye also. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. 3 in favor, 0 opposed.
thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Next,
You have consideration and approval of a $5,500 contract with Express Evaluations. Anne Marie.
Yep, this is me. So this one is an employee evaluation tool. So this is for like the internal evaluations that Commissioner Gray was talking about. We have not done employee evaluations in more than 2 years. So looking at employee files and yeah, I know, shocking.
So this is evaluation day for the
Yeah.
This is evaluation day for the commission.
EMS and
Yeah, so employee evaluations have been shown to improve performance by helping employees to better understand what is expected of them. It also helps supervisors to better understand employee strengths and motivations. Gives feedback on how employees can improve their performance. So this particular platform will integrate with Employee Navigator, which is what we use to select our benefits already. So we already have that in place. It's set up where it'll send an evaluation out to the employee as well as to the supervisor. So it will help us as a county evaluate the employment experience that we have here at the county and helpfully help with a turnover, where we can keep employees, and if they're not happy, we'll know it instead of when they decide to leave during their employment, where we can help to to make this a better place to work. So this is a yearly contract. It's $5,500 for the first year. Upon renewal, there's a $1,000 HR consulting fee that we do not have to pay if we choose not to use that portion going forward. So this year it would be $55,000 and then a minimum of $4,500 in additional years. This is approved in my budget.
Will this help supervisors
Motion.
better understand what's going on within their department? with
Yes.
their employees?
Yep. So it'll send at evaluation time, which I want to set up to be anniversary date for each employee. So once you've been here a year, you get an email saying, can you evaluate your job as the county? So come March, I would get an email saying, can you evaluate your position and where you're at?
Right.
And so, yes, it would help the supervisors better understand what's going on inside their departments.
Yeah. That's, I think that'd be important to know.
Mr. Maryboy. Did I hear a motion from Mr. Maryboy?
I did, yes.
Okay.
A second.
Second by Mr. Adams. Any further question or comments? Call for the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'd like to make a comment too.
A comment, Mr. Adams?
Yeah, I just want to thank Anne Marie for the good work she's doing in HR. I think she brought some important issues from the HR department, and we resolved a lot of things that have been unattended to for a number of years. And I like the idea of having these evaluations and all of the other things that you brought, Anne-Marie. I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
With that, all those opposing? Nay? Motion carried, 3 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Anne-Marie.
Next is
All right, you've got
number 14.
Number 14, consideration and approval of a contract for mass appraisal services for the assessor's office with the Appraisers Inc. for $67,078. This one here you had approved, well, it was on October 15th. So we sent out the RFP in September. You approved kind of a notice of award and intent to negotiate a contract with this vendor. This vendor is ready to go now that it's January and we have the funds. It's time to turn them loose. He will begin collecting the data. We already have connected him with Trey in our IT department for some of the historical content. In the contract, one of the things to help him out is we are waiving some of the fees that typically come from the recorder's office, which is access to deeds and property data. So we'll waive those fees while he's working essentially for us, instead of having him increase his costs for our fees, where we're just paying ourselves to access data. I've talked to the county recorder. She's okay with the fact that he can access those as long as this project continues to go forward. Once the project is done, then he will no longer have access to those. But in the meantime, throughout this project, as he goes out, that the amount, I think it's something that you need to be aware of. The total cost of the contract, $67,078 is right now. That's what we know. As he goes in and assesses and gives valuations to some of the commercial properties, there may be some that we are also not aware of. Actually, I wouldn't say that there will be some that should be commercial that we aren't aware of that they are commercial. Well, this gives him an opportunity also for him to go out and evaluate those. And so In the future, we'll try to control the costs through those efforts, but if there's a discovery of more and more of those commercial properties that need to be assessed by him, then we will come back for an amendment to this total. So know that this isn't all in. There may be some adjustments in the future as well as he comes through. We have asked him to be our representative as well during a Board of Equalization. So if there's an appeal of any of those commercial values, we can use him during that appeal to justify his appraised value on there. And so if that is the case, I've set it up in the language here that we can meet with him and have that equalization and that assessment meeting virtually to hopefully reduce some of the cost. But in the future, he may have to come down and represent the county, which would require us to pay him a wage while he does that. And these are fixed costs in the contract as well. As if he has to stay here, that includes hotel stay. But if we can, we'll try to virtual meeting as much as possible with him now that virtual meetings are a thing and will not be a thing of the past. But just do know that this is just to appraise approximately 356 commercial parcels of land. I think it's poignant to just point out to the public and you that number may change. If it does change, it increases, that's a good thing for the county. It makes sure that we are realizing and recognizing those commercial properties that should be appropriately assessed at a commercial rate. So I just wanted to point that out in the contract. Like I had mentioned in the compensation section, I have everything kind of contracted at certain rates, so the hourly rate during a Board of Equalization will be that $150 an hour. The mileage on there is 0.56 per mile plus lodging if required. But if I can virtual those, like I mentioned, then we'll forego those costs. And so that, Commissioners, is kind of the summary of this contract, what was negotiated there.
How long has it been since we reappraised commercial properties?
Motion.
A long time ago. I wish Rick was here to answer that, but he gives this one example 12 years ago of an individual purchasing a property, a hotel, and he knew the purchase price and hasn't been adjusted for 12 years. And so I don't know if that's true to all of the commercial properties. There's like this 5-year rotation every 5 years, yeah. Or if the commercial property is sold in between then you get a new value on the sale of the property. And so there's been times like that. But when you discuss Greenbelt properties out there that should be commercial, they're not running cattle on, no longer qualify for agricultural producing, then they shouldn't be in the Greenbelt. And it's a commercial property that needs to be taken out of Greenbelt. There's a substantial hit when you take property out of, and that's why a lot of people try to avoid it, is if you're in Greenbelt, you pay a lower tax value. But when you take it out, you owe, typically it's like a 3-year back tax at a commercial value, which can be pretty substantial. I know on our property over across the river, it was about $39,000 to take out of Greenbelt. It was cheaper to get cows than take it out of Greenbelt. But there are properties that are claiming Greenbelt that have structures on them now, and so not cows. And so part of that evaluation will all come from this. And so it should be interesting.
Mr. Berryboy, did you motion?
Yes, I have.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Bruce Adams. Question? Any further question or comments? There being none, the only question I have is if this is not fixed amount, how do we control it?
So we'll be working with him, especially with Rick. I think what you'll see, the potential for any adjustment is up at the top where we listed his proposal, and our request for proposal only included 356 commercial parcels of land. That's what's on our records right now. That's what we're aware of. But there's a sense that there are parcels that we're missing. And so if we or he finds that there are commercial parcels out there, then that number will change. We'll come back in and we'll negotiate with Gordon, with the Appraisals Inc. For a new total and come back in and adjust that number through an amendment. So he's not he can't freely just go and spend in addition to what the total amount is here on this contract. We'll have to amend the contract for him to legally get any more money from us. But rightly so, if there's more, we want him to evaluate it.
Is there a, if we set this amount in stone,
No.
does he have any flexibility to assess and recommend to us increased number
Yes.
to
Yeah.
this 356?
Yes. In
If
his
there is, then we can go ahead and approve this
yes.
as a without the adjustment.
Correct.
Then entertain another documents whereby those that he recommend
Mhm.
inclusion into it, that we can
Yeah. Yep.
something like that.
Absolutely. In this contract, I've allowed in here specific clauses that allow for an amendment to that cost.
Oh, okay.
In his proposal, and I can't remember which page it is specifically, but in his proposal, he recognizes, because we spoke to him about this fact, he recognizes that we may not be giving him a total amount of commercial parcels that are out there. There may be more. And so in his costs, he's recognized that in his fee structure. And so in his fee structure, and I wish I can remember what page it was from his proposal, I listed his full proposal with the contract because it specifically states that, hey, if there's more, here's my rate to do this service. And then we'll just come through with an amendment for that.
Okay. There's a motion and second. Call for the question. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye also. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 3 in favor, 0 opposed. Next, 15.
Okay, 15 is the discussion and approval of the 2022 Board of San Juan County Commissioners Board Committee assignments. Here's that fee, by the way, for his services. And so it's locked in the contract. If we need to change this, then we'll come back in for that. But on here, I tried keeping you all with the same commissions that you had last year. We just wanted to make sure every year you go through this process of divvying up boards and assignments. In the past, you've always been okay with the assignments that you have on here. I don't know if there's any discussion or adjustments that you want to have. A couple of things that I need to point out on here. I can't really move that, but you see my assignments that I attend on here, just kind of that coverage. This is the same as last year. Nothing's really changed other than you see this local homeless coordinating committee. We continue, Anne Marie and I continue to run that board and that body, and That was the $50,000 that we were granted from the state to assist in whether it's rental assistance or homeless prevention. So we continue to operate and oversee that board, which is primarily made up of state agencies or county agencies that are on that board, as well as we have one individual that's from just the private that sits on that board. But we continue to grow that. I continue to work those boards and bodies. I've added on here San Juan Counseling for discussion. The commission is their local authority, and in the past they had commissioners. Then there was some confusion with the special service district. Can you have a commissioner? Can you not? It's in their law structure that they have representation from the commission. So I don't know which one of you would like to be on their board. Similar to how we have somebody sitting on the health district, not the health district, but the San Juan Public Health board. It's no different than that. Commissioner Gray Eyes, you sat with the Public Health Board, but it's trying to get further representation on that San Juan Counseling. It's the San Juan Mental Health Substance Abuse Board. You can kind of see that. I had it in here twice as I moved things around. We'll make those adjustments, but I don't know if there's somebody specifically that wants to take that assignment and attend those meetings. If you want to direct me to attend the meetings, I don't know. It's up to you. I know you guys have a lot of other commitments that are out there. Their board, looking at it, I think is primarily every other month that they meet.
Yeah. Is
Other
there,
than-
the health board is out.
So the health board, you see that Commissioner Gray Eyes under your column where you have San Juan County Public Health Board. So you're still a member of that unless you want to give
Oh,
that
County Health
membership up
Service.
and another commissioner take that.
You love that board, don't you?
Oh yeah.
That's what I thought. Just don't change that.
It looks good for me.
Yeah, I agree. I make a motion that we adopt this commission assignments for 2022 as presented.
Motion made by Mr.
Second.
Adams. Is there a second?
You second it. Kenneth did.
Kenneth second the motion. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye also. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 3 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, with the boards and the bodies, we've been advertising in the local papers to fill some of the vacancies on our other boards and bodies throughout the county. One of them, the Planning Commission, 2 years ago, we held interviews with those people that were interested in being a Planning Commission member. Commissioner Gray, as you were, I think you said it in on those interviews to help narrow down the field and fit, meet those requirements of the Planning Commission bylaw. I don't know who wants to set in on those interviews this next go around, but we do have several letters of interest that we need to go through and make sure that they meet the requirements, qualifications of the bylaws, but seat those interested candidates. There are two, so I think there's, let's see, 3 or 4 vacancies, 3 vacancies, and 2 letters of interest from returning candidates that want to continue forward being planning commission members. And so, do I have anybody interested in wanting to run through interviews? Mr. Grad, you're both
You're
pointing
something
at,
like
you
this.
both are thumbing at each other. I'll take either one of you. As long as I have a commissioner, it makes it a little bit easier when it hits the fan. There are some
Really
that
does a good job.
there are some that do not meet all the requirements, and so we need to go through
Okay.
and give a good evaluation of those so that you're seeing what I'm seeing.
He said he'd do it.
So, Commissioner Graz, is you're willing? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get you everything and set
By
up
recommendation.
by recommendation
Right.
from Commissioner Adams. Okay, I'll set everything up for those interviews of those candidates' letter of interest that we have. Other than that, the other boards and committees that we are advertising, not getting a lot of volunteers for, and so that's the only one that's heated. Other than that, commissioners, we're on to commission comments.
Report.
Yeah, that.
Any volunteer?
I will.
Mr. Adams?
Yesterday, I got invited to attend the swearing in of the new mayor of Moab. So I went down to that and met with them. While I was down there, I took an opportunity to tour the new health clinic in Spanish Valley. And they have invited Commissioner Gray Eyes and Commissioner Maryboy to come down and tour that sometime when you're driving through. Caitlin is the manager there, and she'd be glad to show you. That health clinic is unbelievable. That thing has got fantastic equipment and people, and I think they're doing good. They're from November to December, they increased the amount of people that came to the clinic by over 100, and they expect to do that similar moving forward over the next few months. This week I've got a CIB meeting in Salt Lake. We were going to go, they wanted us to come in person, but I got an email this morning, said they've canceled the in-person portion of it, so we'll be by Zoom on Thursday. On Wednesday morning, I'll be attending by Zoom the opioid litigation settlement. And I believe Kenneth and or Alex will be on that, representing San Juan County's position. The state is asking counties to consider a settlement of the national opioid litigation. So the only other thing I just wondered, Mac, do you know when the legislature starts this year? Is it
18th of January.
when is it?
The 18th.
18th of January?
Yes. Yeah. UAC sent out an email yesterday. They're starting to calendar everything going
Okay.
forward, and so kind of shows their meetings.
January 18th.
Yeah.
That's the same day as our commission meeting, but
Yeah.
it'll go until what, March? First
Yes.
week of March?
Correct.
Well, okay.
So it starts. So it begins.
Let the games begin.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And so yesterday I informed all of the directors throughout the county and elected officials just to be on the watch,
Yeah,
watch for your specific bills. And so there's no surprises.
yeah, absolutely. Anyway, that's all I have to report, Willie.
Mr. Mayor Boy, do you have any report?
Yes, sir. Before I left home, I did another drive into Red Mesa all the way to Yellow Rock Point. Met with Mr. Herman Farley on some of the community issues. And come to find out that the NDOT is out there, but they're not dropping the blade. I don't know why, but they seem to be running all over the place, but they're not grading the road. And that's one of the major concern with the community is that they're out there running around, but they're not grading the road. So something needs to happen, and I'm reaching out to Herman Daniels again. We had our last meeting with the Resources Committee, and we're supposed to come back and talk about the crosswork with the nation and the county, and that never happened. So I'm reactivating that. I'm working on that. And other than that, it looks like the water is going to be one of the biggest issues this coming summer. They are closing some of the wells, and most of the wells are already closed, and because of the contaminants. And other than that, I'm up here in St. Louis, Missouri. Snowed in all directions, came in pretty good. Now the roads are pretty bad, and I understand that there's some areas they close off the road. So once it clears up, I'm going to be headed home. When I do, I hope I have a meeting going with the road department. And then the other thing is that the veterans from all 7 chapters are planning to meet to get together and start talking about the veterans funding. It seems like they're being shortchanged in a lot of ways, and what they want to do is they want to establish themselves as a nonprofit organization with a 501c3, all 7 chapters. The 1868 treaty has a wording within that treaty that says that the Native Americans shall not bear arms again. But after that, the Native Americans and the Navajos were heavily involved in all foreign conflicts. So that still stands, and there's not a whole lot of vision for the Native American veterans. So those are some of the things that we are working on right now, and we're going to try to pursue as far as we can to see what we can do about that. The Navajo Mountain is very, very much interested, the same as Danahocho and Ojeto and other chapters. So those are some of the things that we're looking at. And other than that, today's vote on the amending the school board area on redistricting, I made a motion from the get-go. So I stand by my motion, and that's the reason why I voted no. And then the other thing is that I know that there's some concerns and issues with the fire department in areas, especially in Spanish Valley. And I believe that the Mr. McDonald is getting ready to cancel the contract, and I would urge Mr. McDonald not to do so. This is something that we really, really need to look at, and I would recommend that that we don't cancel the contract. until we thoroughly review that and go over that. And that's all I ask. And thank you very much, commissioners. That will be the extent of my report.
That's it.
You're,
Thank you. Mine?
That-
Report, yeah.
I have no report.
No report.
Okay.
All right.
That's
motion to adjourn.
okay.
Motion.
Second.
Second by Ms. Smith.
Third.
Vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
I and I.
Did you vote? Can I?
He wants
I
to-
did. I voted already. Aye.
Okay, I also. Oppose nay. 3 in favor, 0 opposed. We stand adjourned. at this
Thanks,
time.
commissioners. Do we have permission to use your stamp, or you can sign sign right here? She's ready.
Yes.
Let's see. I was like, hey, she's ready. She'll be in here. Where's our turn off button? Stop share.